right, so this one is one of the most important topics we are going to talk about, and I've been wanting to talk about it for a while. Real quick, before we get into it, I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to um, Patrick Bet David, little PBD podcast that I like watching. He's this Iranian immigrant and really interesting guy. He always is willing to talk to a diverse group of people, and periodically he'll pull up he read Power versus Force, and so he'll actually pull up the chart and he'll kind of just dip his little toe in there when they're talking about something. And I would love him to see how far he could actually go with that. If he were to integrate that consciousness into his discussions, it would really bring a lot more compassion to the political divide. Instead of just dismissing someone as stupid or whatever, like if people would start understanding why people perceive things differently. So I really like him, and I like that I can see like this kind of stuff will be entering the public sphere. It still hasn't. That's part of why we're doing this.
Yep.
He also wrote a book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely, which was more about choosing great competition, not really the enemy I'm talking about. And to talk about the enemy that I want to talk about, I want to share a scripture. Okay, Matthew 4, 8 through 10. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. This was I've heard it called the Great Temptation. This is also when the Buddha was under the Bodhi tree. Mara, which was seen as like a demon or the ego, it's got different interpretations, also tempted him with power and control. And that is seen as, and from other stories, other mystics that have actually stayed alive to talk about their experience. At the gateway of enlightenment, the last temptation one is given is power and control. And so how this comes about is the fall of Adam and Eve was the creation of lack. Adam, by being deceived into the illusion of lack, created this thirst for and need for survival. So when we think about the ego, there's two things really I think about. One, it just wants to survive because its existence exists only in that it believes that it can die, and because it lacks, it's always seeking. Yeah. So in a world of perpetual seeking, the ultimate kind of end game to that would be, because it can never end, there's no end to it, but if you can't just deploy your efforts, if you can actually commandeer other people to serve your efforts,
yeah,
that's where extreme like dictators come from. That's where like these most extreme problems come from. That is where every problem comes from. And if you listen, if you watch politics, it doesn't matter what you're into. There's always people saying, oh, they're doing this or they're doing this. Well, who's the they that everyone's talking about? And that's what I want to talk about today. That's why this podcast is so important, because I want to call out clearly and plainly. I mean, if I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, of the couple things I would love just to contribute to the conversation in the world is, one, there is only love, and two, the common enemy that we are fighting is the thirst for power and control.
Yes, and it's absolutely everywhere. That's why it's hard to articulate. That's why I feel like when we're talking about the common enemy, it's hard for people to actually even understand it. They can sense it, they can feel it. I feel like a lot of times, like in corporations and stuff, we can feel it in that way sometimes, but it is literally everywhere. And everybody has a choice. And love, again, is the absolute way. But when you start getting into some of these energy fields and over power and control, there's greed, right? It's all the external things we're trying to capture and take a hold of that we keep elevating ourselves. Finances, whether it's a position at work, whether whether it's the status of a house or whatever. We're constantly, the whole reason we're doing that is for power. It represents this I'm higher than others, right? Which is fleeting and false. And it can be used to manipulate others. A lot of people, again, are sleepwalking, so they're not even in the realization of what's going on. But it's very controlling.
Yeah, and it is the reason why it's hard to call it out is because it isn't an individual person. If one were to try to call it, who's the person pulling all these strings, there might be some groups, and I don't know about some of that stuff. Like but what I do know is that the driving force behind it is this thirst for power and control. And if you start looking at the world that way, you're going to start seeing it. And and as I've talked about before, when you say, and this is where it gets like incredibly annoying to me, if you say you're claiming to do something virtuous, but you're really leveraging something virtuous for power and control, that's definitionally taking the Lord's name in vain. So you saw like the Crusaders in Europe, like, you must come to Jesus, and then they're killing everybody.
Right. We're trying to liberate people, and we just killed all these babies in the process. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. And every ideology, I mean, if you look at, so like communism versus capitalism ungarnished from this thing, if you let that go in the name of making profits or something, I do this and that, and the communist is in the name of inclusivity or the name of like equality. We are making and taking you this way. So there's two ends of the spectrum. I want to share it on my masculine feminine chart real quick. This is one of the ways to see it. So we've talked about this before in other episodes. You have yin on the left, yang on the right. And I actually made a test. Maybe I'll post that cool test that I made. I'm actually making this little cool test you can take to see where you how balanced you are in like work, personal life, stuff like that. But generally men are more yang, right? And the feminine, women are more yin. We have both. A more evolved person embodies a balance of both. But when you get far off on one side of the yang, you get into the restriction column, and you start doing things that are actually going to create restriction and stifle creation, and it does so via control, and that's how that plays out. And then on the other side, the yin, you see manipulation. So both of these outer columns are on the same team. It's power and control. They do it different ways, but it's both power and control. So that is the enemy of the yin. It's the enemy of the yang. It's the enemy of conservatives. It's the enemy of
everything.
Liberals.
Religions, everything. Again, I want to focus in a little bit more when you're talking about the love aspect of it, right? Like what the belief is, it's interesting, is like how to gain that power. Like if you are full of loving awareness, you are not in need to seek approval or things or power of others in that way. So where, again, the separation is coming from is from the egoic operating system of the belief of, I don't have it unless I have this thing or I have this thing. It could, and again, like we're giving all these examples, it could be the title and a position of like your career. It could be like your status, all these things. The reality, and then what happens is some who get very hungry in the power, another way to just look at it simply to see where somebody is coming from is whether they are in a place of service or if they are in a place of trying to take, if there's some manipulation going around. So, and you have to be a little careful there too, because they can be coming in disguising under kindness and using it to manipulate your power. So what I always try to articulate to people and reflect back to them is, how do you feel? Mm-hmm. If something's feeling off, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. The spirit and love itself is of service. It's loving, it's giving. There's nothing awkward in those energy fields. So when you're looking at those who are coming from a loving awareness and more enlightened and trying to be of service, they are never trying to take anybody's power. They're actually doing the complete opposite, which is empowering people. And they're not looking for anything in return for it. So there is no agenda other than literally to come from a state of beingness to encourage other people to come into that same placement.
So government, the wolf in sheep's clothing, when you're talking about that, that's what I was thinking about. So you even have like pastors, and that's what gets people out of church, because they feel like they were being compelled. And I know in their view, sometimes this is why it's important to put sunlight on it. We have to see in ourselves when we are actually doing that. I fully believe that a lot of, say a religious setting, that some Sunday school teacher, pastor, whatever, is scaring the shit out of somebody to kind of force the behavior that they believe they ought to do,
right?
Which is antithetical to the gospel. But I believe in their mind, they feel like they're creating all these crazy rules on someone. Hey, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or you can't do that. And that's going to force you to be righteous and go to God.
Totally. It's controlling. And so it's a way for them to be like, look how good I am. And to belittle somebody else to make them feel worse, and to put them more in a power state, right? Instead of doing actually what it really needs to do is for them to take a look inside to go, oh shit, I'm being a real human right now. And yes, those kind of places, anytime you're getting into spirituality especially, is really, you got to be cautious. And no different with our politics too. We start these things. One of the things we were talking about too is decentralizing these things. They start off with a good purpose, but they get too big. Then they end up having to protect the thing itself instead of serving what they usually intended to do. So any institutions.
So before I get to that, this happens at the microcosm too. This happens. Parents do it to children. Children do it to parents. Husbands do it to wives. Wives do it to husbands. It can still happen at the micro level. I've seen even with the just the basic yin yang, you'll find it in all parts of your life. Now, the part that you were starting to bring up is that this gets worse when you lose human connection. When you stop. We're already battling with 85% of the population operating below the level of courage.
Yeah.
And so to add fire, and it's about 50-50 in the U.S. So we're already dealing with a lower level of consciousness from a lot of the people, which means what they perceive to be the best is probably not great most of the time. However, there's some level of light that can usually steer the morality. And fortunately, we have a bit of a higher level here, but where you lose any benefit of that spiritual reality is when you remove the human. And the way that happens is they did a study, the Dunbar study in the early 90s, that if you get a group over 150 people, you stop knowing everybody's name. For me, it's like 40 people. I don't know how you do 150. But say you get a group of 150 people in the study, you don't know their names. So in order to manage it, then you have to get hierarchies, and then people become titles. And
numbers.
Then the people that are actually drawn the most to power and control, where do you think they want to be?
Up at the top.
In the top of some hierarchy. So you get an organization, and
That's where you
the
get
bigger
your
it gets,
sociopath.
the larger it gets, the more hierarchy, the more bureaucracy as well. But then you have the people that come to the top, and it always tilts. And again, this is a natural human behavior to tilt towards power and control. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have the remorse or recourse of, oh, that's Susan next door, or that's Johnny, whoever.
We lose the connection, like at a time where we're more connected than ever, right? With where we can access, we can talk, figure out what's going on around the world, talk to people. We are more disconnected than ever, and we have lost that sense of just genuine human connection. And then again, to your point, it's people have become numbers instead of names. We feel this again when we go back onto corporations and stuff. Anybody calling customer service, how irritating is it when you're calling there and you can't even just get somebody to see you because you're just a number, right? So there's this disconnect, and how are we genuinely going to care for people? And I believe this is part of why we're seeing such an uptick with mental health issues. there was a time where you would sit at a fire at the end of the night, and it was like you didn't have a choice. You didn't go down to the grocery store to pick up your things. You had to rely on your community to get the things you needed and to rely on each other. I mean, even simple things. My grandmother, I remember her talking when she was raising my dad and my uncles. They didn't have enough money for 2 cars, so a lot of people didn't. And when they ended up getting another car, she would talk about like giving all these other women rides to work, whether they're secretaries or bringing their kids or whatever. Just even that sense of community, and we do that to a certain extent now, but like. We have so many things that could take away or distract us that take us away from that genuine connection of being able to see somebody.
Thought of the examples where this has happened too during COVID, where there was all these control mechanisms for your good. And it was interesting as like a human experiment to see how subject we are to it. And it's not that the people, it's almost like this enemy. Again, the whole point is I want to challenge everyone out there to put sunlight on this in every facet of their life. As we do that, we're going to start seeing that we are enslaved to some degree by in all these sneaky ways.
It's even our food in this country.
Right.
Like even our freaking food.
Yeah.
Like everything is controlled. It is nuts when you really start like going in and dissecting and starting to pay attention. It's like every time something comes up, it's asking that question of like, where am I, and this is part of the practice. When you're coming into that awareness, where do I stand there? Do I believe in that? How do I engage with that? How do I get my power back?
Yeah, so the way and the solution we've been learning lately, and part of it is, like I said in the political discussion, people think that there's just intelligence and like dumb people and smart people. Well, during COVID, you had really smart people that were completely paralyzed with fear, and then you had really dumb people that weren't, and vice versa. The example I like to pull out is, and there is no correlation between the two. If you look at Forrest Gump, very low IQ, incredibly high level of operation. Mm-hmm. And the way that and conscientia, I believe the root word is to go along with, when we were in that Sean seminar, to go along with science, intelligence. There's a, and I believe it was Jordan. He said in Jonah and Isaiah, it talks about God being your conscience. Mm-hmm. So your sense of morality is what it matters most. And so to elevate your sense of morality, you've got to do a whole system of things that we're learning about. This is where uncovering the shadow, letting go of negative emotions, changing your belief systems, the whole body of spiritual work. But one of the things that's for sure, and the one I like to talk about all the time, and I won't get crazy deep into it, but I'm telling you, it's going to be one of the biggest shifts in our whole, when you start seeing where we are enslaved. The one that's most bizarre to me and the most out in the open is the money in the U.S., the dollar. It's gone down. It's lost 99.9% of its value over like the last 100 years. And without getting too deep into it, as we have more and more competition and more like technology, everything should be getting cheaper for everybody that's here. Your price of your home should be dirt cheap. Everything should be cheap because the benefits of technology. But when there's a huge organization and it wants to have control, and it actually literally controls the money, it just prints more of it, which how it's playing out is we've got these people working paycheck to paycheck or just collecting welfare that don't have any assets, that are never going to have assets because they're just barely chasing to keep up. And then as everything just gets more expensive for them, the people that happen to own a home or whatever else, it goes up in value, but it's really not going up in value because your dollar is weaker anyway. But at least they have some assets. But this kind of wealth gap's getting worse. So nobody's talking about this politically. This is why this has to enter the political the discussion everywhere, especially politically, because what we're fighting against, and I'm sick of seeing like the liberals and the conservatives fighting each other. You're fighting the same enemy.
Yep.
So I don't. This won't be the only episode we do want to talk about, but I just want to start calling out, putting sunlight on the common enemy, because I believe it's the unifier. We can actually unify around the enemy, and I'm not saying the enemy that we fight, the enemy that we understand and we give it love and compassion, and then we bring it in line, because there's nothing loving. This is a natural. This is the root of all of our suffering, and if we don't do something about it, we're going to be screwed in pretty much every area of our life. And I feel like that's why everyone feels change is happening right now. Not everyone can digest it. You're like, oh, the food supply, they've got red dye and all this crap in our food, which is true. They got all these addictive sugars in our food. These foundations that are designed to actually heal, like cure something, they go out of business if they don't. So that people are starting to be vigilant. The fact that we're starting to put eyes on it gives me hope. Yeah. But that's also why it's kind of, this doesn't have to be so scary, guys, if we can just make the enemy clear. Because then as everything happens in the microcosm, if you can be vigilant of whether or not that's coming from power and control or love, we can start to just nip it.
And that's why it's so powerful. Again, say it all the time. You can't change the world. You got to change yourself. And by doing this and starting to awakening, it's instead of being in reactive states or victim states, because we're just not awake, when you're talking about even as simple as food to our money to all of these things. And it's a lot of stuff to take in the sense of like to really go through and dissect. But you can really just start by just starting to awaken and pay attention and starting just to even ask that simple question. Where is my power? Who's holding it? Where am I allowing them to take it? Like, starting to wake up and recognize, like, if you're in a situation, whether you're in a marriage, whether you're at work, and you feel your boss is manipulating and utilizing you to, like, put more power for them and it's not fair, like, pay attention to that. What is going on? A lot of times, again, we're in victim states. We can feel it. We're uncomfortable, but we feel we can't do anything about it. We're stuck, right? I can't tell you how many times I hear people come in and they're like, well, yeah, and yes, there is a point. We have to, like, provide for our families and do things, but we become victims to this system or the common enemy, not realizing that there are other ways that we can awaken to make conscious choices to not have to give our power away to this. Yeah. And the more you start to wake up, oh boy, and the more you claim it back, you're not willing to give it up. Right. You're very cautious of where you are putting it to. Whether it's you're going to church on Sunday and you have your pastor, bishop, whoever's up there talking, are you giving them all your power? Are you, even if it's even where they're coming from a good place, but they're belittling? Where is that? Where do you stand with that?
I agree, and our forefathers. I'm trying to look up the calibration real quick. The Constitution of the United States. Where is it?
Yeah, like what a great virtue we were trying to lead this country on. Yeah. Every equal man, except for all of you slaves.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so
women.
So I believe our founding fathers knew this, and that's why I believe the Constitution was scripture. It calibrates at 710. There's other things I could tell you on here. The Mother Teresa, by the way, 710 as well.
She's a badass.
She was absolutely badass. The New Testament 640, so even higher than the New Testament, because it's all built on sovereignty, individual freedoms. Think about your spiritual development. Again, back to trying to scare your congregation into righteousness. That's not love. That's not even part of the. That's completely antithetical to what this is, what the human experience is. So, and I know that I believe that those founding fathers knew that they tried to write something that would insulate from this thing, which the fancy word for it is megalomania. It means thirst for power and control. They knew they're getting taxed without representation. They want to come to this place and they wanted to preserve individual sovereignty. What I don't think they realized, I think they did. They probably did know that if an organization got big, it would get corrupt.
Yeah.
What we don't realize, what we haven't realized, and we've allowed it to happen, is we have a metastasized in all the areas, and sometimes it's businesses, sometimes it's the government, and this is the bizarre part too. I was even thinking the other day, a lot of pretty much any ideology that you have, most ideologies, if your ideology is all about making people be part of your church or whatever the ideology is, then that's also antithetical. And why are you doing it?
For power
and
control.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why even churches, like, coming from a great place, right? But pick the chosen one. Pick that. Like, make sure you pick the right one, you know? Like, and again, defeating the whole point of what Jesus was trying to say, which was, don't give your power over there. Don't give them to the Pharisees. Don't give it over here. Like, it is within you. Another way that I, like, when I'm working with clients and stuff, that I try to, like, especially with younger kids, just trying to articulate it. Is your light being taken? Is somebody trying to dim that light down to tell you that, like, you can't shine because they need you, or, like, you know what I mean? Is it being taken? Is somebody standing in front of that? Because really, if anything, just as in a good friendship, nobody's trying to take that. It's a support. It's an encouragement. There's enough love for all of us to come into the finish line together. And corruption in that power is this greediness of, like, it's a way to also, like, manipulate people and control them and get them to do what they want, like, all the things, right? So it's just the key of overcoming it is start paying attention.
Yeah. So to the remedy, start paying attention, like you said, and make sure that you have a group. And if it's not a small group, you're probably going to watch what I were talking about happen. A small group of friends, or if you can establish a support system that's small and intimate, like, you know everybody well, the two roles of the group are to support and challenge.
Yes.
And if you're not
challenge the belief system and to support the whole as you're growing and learning, that is the absolute key of a community.
Yeah. So the challenge part would be challenging the way you view things, the way you see it, the beliefs you have, and they might be right, but you've got to challenge them. And then people are supportive in that they're allowing you to discover it, and the allowing you to discover it part is the mysticism, which I love that Sean finally framed it up for us that well to understand, like, put a word behind it. But when you are discovering your beliefs and your insights from intuitive knowing, it's way more powerful than you haven't been programmed or scared into or obliged by some external force.
Right. Those are your belief systems coming in. That could be, like, depending where your container is, those are data points. The truth, actually, and the knowingness is coming from a deeper place, right? And that part, when we're talking about mysticism or mystics have the ability, they're able, it's an experiential experience that they have felt oneness with God. It's not something that they intellectualize or that they've found or they've read about. It is an actual experience. Where the mystics come into play of this big conscious shift coming up is the mystics have the ability to be able to see the divinity within everyone and everything. And so, again, their viewpoint is not of separation. It doesn't look at anybody as the enemy, actually. Quite frankly, they look at everybody as brothers and sisters. And whether, like, you're talking about St. Francis of Assisi, who's talking about mother, like, the sister sun, brother moon, to even, like, animals, to the beingness, like, there's an interconnectedness. And so mystics understand that there is a deeperness, that if we are hurting one, we are hurting the all. And that in the end, the mystics understand that the river, the flowing connection of it all is love itself.
Yeah.
And that is enough for everybody, folks. Like, it's the only energy that like keeps expanding. I use that analogy often in the office if I have parents in there who have multiple children. Hell, even if you've had animals and have multiple pets, you feel like you, like, have one, you're like, oh my God, I love him so much. How will I love the next one? You just do. Like, how do you have friends that you just keep loving and loving and loving? Like, it just expands. It's not like, okay, well, I've reached my limit of 10, and so I can't bring anybody else in now. That's not how it works. And the belief system a lot on this control is the opposite of that.
The opposite being that there is a limit.
Yes.
Or there's scarcity. So anything that's eternal in nature, there's a quote from Asim that's love like an idea only gets stronger when shared. And that's because it's eternal. Anything that actually has finicity to it, or if there's some finite amount of it, then it's not eternal in nature. And anything that's subject to scarcity.
Yep.
And so that's the ego worries about taking away. Which ironically, so as this is happening, and we can see it, this is happening in people's even subconscious. I don't even know if people really. In fact, I follow Bitcoin a lot, and people have, it's a spiritual thing, and you might think they're nuts, but it's because it represents integrity. It's the first time in human history that there's been such a thing as an integrous storage of value that can't be taken by a government or diluted by printing money, or like nobody can make duplicate, like fake beads like we did with the Native Americans when we landed here. There's all sorts of crazy things we've done to exploit people, we as humans. And the reason Bitcoin actually, the whole crux of it is that it has perfect scarcity. There's only 21 million coins, and you can't ever create more. So based on just that principle, which reminds me of to have this human experience, everything's based in scarcity. Everything's based in the illusion of lack, the illusion of scarcity.
Yes.
If not so, then we wouldn't be able to suffer.
Right. And that is right, which is such the remembrance process. Damn it, we all forgot when we got here. We have to like remember this as we go on. The suffering process too is like suffering is created. We keep talking about this. Pain is inevitable. Suffering really at the end of the day is a choice. It comes from desires of something that you're desiring, that you're saying that you don't have, which is actually just a belief and not truth itself, because everything you have is right here within.
That's right. If you don't have it, you haven't given it.
Amen.
So that's the enemy, megalomania, and it's a big one. Son of a bitch. It's the worst. And I know that's not as helpful as a name or something to point at, but if you can just start evaluating life through that lens and seeing where it's playing out, you'll start seeing it maybe in your relationship. Maybe you're doing it to your kids.
Yep.
Maybe you
could even be the kids' soccer team down the street. Could be like just the job, like every single place. Just pay attention.
I'd love it to be nauseating and just repulsive to our humanity in general when they see this behavior, such that we can reel it in.
Yep.
Gotta reel it in. I don't know how we've gotten to this point. I don't know how I've grown up without ever seeing it very well. And I'm just like I said, even with like our standard, like money, the way money's done in the U.S. and the way debt is done in the U.S. and
because we're immersed in it. We just got here. I don't know. When I was a kid in the 80s, I wasn't like asking people like, where does the money come from? Like, when we're going to McDonald's, is this a corporation? Like, are they trying to take, like, and that's part of that, again, that awakening and that remembrance process. And it's a journey, and it's an undoing over and over and over. Like, as you start to unravel, you unravel a lot. In that practice, you start to claim more back of yourself, and you're just more aware of your choices you're making, quite frankly.
All of the big wars and controversial dilemmas and everything that's going on, look at it through this lens, and you're going to see, that's power and control. Oh, that's power and control. So sovereignty, which is worth dying for. Freedom, which is worth dying for. These are like the highest possible. I don't even know what freedom rings in at, but it's high.
It's got to be one of the highest vibrations. I mean, that's what we're doing all this for. Is coming out of is liberating out of these limited beliefs and these scarcity mindsets to have freedom, which is when we talk about it again, living out of God's will.
700 universal rights, human dignity, right for freedom. 700. So Well, it's found in 3 pages on here. I could find the other ones. But sovereignty, allowing people to be free to make their choices, that doesn't mean you're a pacifist. It doesn't mean you put up with non-integrity. There is a time where the loving thing to do is potentially take action, even violence, in my opinion. But
confrontation.
Confrontation. It just depends on what you're dealing with. But I believe if we do 2 things as a society, this is all I'm asking for. If I get smudged, bring consciousness into every discussion in businesses and politics and health. There ought to be an understanding of how formative these emotions are to our well-being. Actual health, wealth, it's all subjective, and it exists in this dimension that nobody understands and nobody quite knows how to talk about. So I'd love that under this sphere. And let's watch out for our freaking enemy, this asshole thing that is absolutely creating all the suffering in the world. Yep. And we all have it to some degree, so let's fix it in ourselves. If we see it happening in our community, let's do what we can to resolve it, and let's preserve our sovereignty by creating our little nodes of protected nodes of support, which are these groups where
we're having these conversations, where we're more open, where it's there is a lot to be said of coming back into like-minded and practicing these things, so that we have this safe community to be like, hey, what was your experience? Just on my way over here, I was talking to one of our good friends, like in this of like, how do we get out of this, you know, and like feeling like it's suffering or like failing. It's like, no, man, you're on the path. Like you're coming more and more aware to this. And so as we can create community under 150, we can start witnessing each other and each other's support system, like you're saying, like to the community. Did I just say a word wrong again? Okay.
I'm laughing about it. Good thing we only have 60 subscribers, so we haven't hit the 150.
True.
Hopefully we get more. So, but on some level, that's part of why I do this podcast, is to help bring community together and help bring these nodes, get the conversation started. I would love to literally float with all people that need the love and support, and I just feel like there's nothing more interesting than this. So I'm just grateful that we've been karmically provided the setting and opportunity to be exposed to this stuff in this kind of time where humanity's evolving out of a lower level of operation. And if we can put really good light on megalomania, that has to take us very far, because every time that humans have been evolving, like piece by piece, it redigs its claws.
Totally.
Because I don't believe anyone's ever called out the enemy specifically at what it is.
And that's why we're moving into more of a Christ conscious awareness, unity consciousness. The shift is putting what you're talking about is putting light on it. It's dissolving that density that isn't serving the higher good, and to break it up with some transparency.
So AI could be the greatest thing ever, it could be the thing that controls us, right? So that's called the enemy. Everything that we can do in our power to keep that in check, to keep businesses in check, to keep governments in check, pretty much any group, especially a group larger than 150. Any institution is where we have to start first. Church, religions, any institution that you have in your life, go through it.
Bye, Felicia.
But yeah, you're probably going to have to withdraw, or you're going to just start seeing it. And so for however many people end up watching this podcast, I hope to take that message to heart and be vigilant of megalomania.
Yeah.
In all of in your life on the micro scale. Maybe it's present in your life, but be particularly aware of it in the institutions, because that's where it's deadly, literally deadly.
Literally.
And let's evolve. Let's be better humans. Let's have the courage to call it out. Let's put light on it. Let's not take it anymore. It's just,
bring it to the pulpit.
Let's go.
Let's do this.
So obviously I'm a little bit, hopefully we could convey that message the best we could, but we'll talk a lot about that. That's one of the key things that I feel like is lacking in our human awareness right now. So
definitely we'll be tapping around this one quite often. So, but thank you for joining.
Make some comments, questions. You think we're right? You've seen it in your life. But thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate it.
God bless.
Keep floating.